Meantime, earlier in the day, President Trump held a news conference with outgoing Department of Government Efficiency head Elon Musk. Senior White House correspondent Peter Ducey has that part of the story, that part of the day, tonight live from the North Lawn. Good evening, Peter.
Good evening, Brett. Today was the first time we've seen anybody walk away from the White House with a golden key to the White House presented by President Trump. None of the scrutiny on DOGE or on its findings over the last 130 days appear to have bothered President Trump one bit. So even though Musk is heading back to his companies now, President Trump says he'll be back.
This is not the end of DOGE, but really the beginning.
That's why Elon Musk walks away from the White House with his head held high, despite DOGE's $160 billion in current savings falling short of his $1 trillion projection.
I'd liken it to sort of Buddhism. It's like a way of life. So it is permeating throughout the government, and I'm confident that over time we'll see $1 trillion of savings.
After 130 days, Musk returns to the private sector bruised, literally, spotted next to the Resolute desk with a black eye.
So, no, I just wasn't around with little X, and I said, go ahead, punch me in the face, and he did.
As President Trump travels to Pennsylvania to celebrate a new U.S.-Japanese steelmaking partnership, he's also talking tariffs and giving the courts credit for once.
We had two important decisions yesterday on the tariffs because, again, we have to be able to fight a fair fight with other countries.
Republicans continue probing the Biden administration's use of auto pen, something the president says should have been easy to sniff out.
I'd read your newspapers or your media the next day and I'd say, well, I didn't approve that, and I would find it. I mean, they wouldn't get away with it for long.
Key Biden aides are scheduling interviews with House lawmakers to talk about Biden's decline. But as for an interview with Dr. Jill Biden,
well, I hate the concept of it. It's the wife of a man who was going through a lot of problems.
The president also offered up his POV on a viral clip that world leaders have one-of-a-kind insight into.
This week, there was a video on board a plane that showed the First Lady of France slapping her husband, Emmanuel Macron. Do you have any world leader to world leader marital advice?
Make sure the door remains closed. Was not good.
Yes.
No, I spoke to him, and he's fine. They're fine.
That's good advice. We also had a chance to ask President Trump whether or not he would ever consider pardoning Diddy, somebody that he said back in 2012 when he was the host of The Apprentice was a good friend of his. Obviously, a lot has changed between then and now. The president says nobody has asked him to pardon Diddy, but that he would certainly look at all the facts. Brett.
Yeah, but not saying that he would. Just to be clear.
Right.
And also, he also made this accusation against China today, a different one. What was that about?
He says that China has totally violated the trade agreement that delayed the mega tariffs with the United States. He didn't go into a ton of detail about what exactly China did, but that explains why Scott Bessent told you last night that the talks have stalled between the U.S. and China. And now President Trump says he hopes to talk to Xi soon, and he thinks that everything will sort itself out. Brett?
Okay, we'll watch that closely. Peter Ducey live in the North Lawn. Peter, thanks.
Oh, Jesse, they can't quit Elon. They're going to miss him if they don't have him as a punching bag.
They should beg for him to stay because he's saving us a lot of money. Democrats don't care about that. When they did save us money, when Bill Clinton knocked off about 400,000 workers, we all said, "That-a-boy, Bill. Way to go." If Joe Biden had cut expenses, we would have said, "That-a-boy, Joey." Because we're not going to fight just to fight like they do. We fight for what's right. Now they're accusing him of being a drug addict. There was drug addicts in the last White House, and there was cocaine all over the place. They didn't say anything about that when an actual drug addict was running the country behind the scenes. I haven't seen any evidence of drugs, but I am suspicious of the black guy. More on that later.
You're always suspicious about black guys.
Black guys, yes, Greg. The Democrats, when you ask them what their plan is to reduce spending and save us from debt crisis, they don't have a plan. Jessica the other day said, well, we have to raise taxes. Okay, well, that's funny because you can't raise taxes out of a $36 trillion hole. Barack Obama raised taxes and the debt went up. Joe Biden could have raised taxes, but he didn't. Why not? So can't we just join together? And I say this to Jessica, and I say this to all the Democrats. Why can't we be good partners? We're all Americans. Let's work together. Let's not just kick the can down the road like you guys do and then explode when anybody tries to fix the problem you created. We are going to die as a country. I don't want to die together. I want to live together in harmony with the Democratic Party, and we can just save this country from financial ruin. We can do this. I know we can.
Jesse, maybe you could buy a Coke for Jessica. For those of us
Buy
who are
Coke
old,
for
old,
Jessica?
old
Not
enough
cocaine, the Coca-Cola.
We're old enough to remember the
soda.
commercial.
It was a Pepsi.
I feel no, it was Coke.
That
It was. I
saved-
feel like you're about to burst into. I'd like
Kylie
to buy the world a
Pepsi
drink.
commercial. It was a
Coke.
Pepsi.
Can you work
Oh, wait,
together?
that's specific. I can't make you're trying to Coke Jenner.
Yeah.
Forget it.
Can you work together with Jesse?
100%, but Jesse's got to give up his tax cut. And
Then-
he
then
won't.
you're not gonna work with Jesse.
No, he's rich and he needs that cut.
Not a tax cut.
You're
We're
getting
just
an enormous
keeping
tax
the
cut.
tax rates the same.
That's literally untrue.
No, that's exactly
I will
what they're doing.
No, it's not. It's just not true.
They
It's
are.
not true.
But if they don't
Listen,
pass this legislation, the tax cuts will go away. So there'll be a tax raise.
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
Shannon
All right, the
agrees
funny
with
logic.
me. That means you're
that's not how it
obviously
works.
wrong.
That's his thing. If whoever sits in that seat, if you like half agree with him, then he says that he's right. Give up your tax cut and we'll talk about some cost savings. We'll go, I mean, Pete Hegseth promised us an audit of the Pentagon.
It's never passed.
It's never
By
passed,
the way,
and
the
they're getting a
Pentagon's never
bigger
passed.
budget. Well, let's talk about cuts to national defense. What do you think?
I'd love
All
to
right,
cut.
anyway.
Is there waste
Elon
within the
has-
Pentagon?
What?
Is there waste within the Pentagon?
Yeah, I'm sure there's waste everywhere. But at the moment where you are supposed to be talking about waste, you don't need this massive transfer of wealth to the wealthy. And the 2017 Trump tax cuts actually did have more for the lower classes than this package does.
Mm-hmm.
People earning over $50,000, their incomes are going to go down. People earning over, $4 million for sure, and I think even over $2.5 million are going to get a lot more money
How?
because of their cut, because of the tax cut.
Jessica,
I need
it's
to say
just
something to
keeping
Elon
the
Musk,
rates
though.
the same.
If that was a Democratic DOGE master that showed up with a shiner and there was a report that he did so much ketamine that he couldn't pee straight, you would be leading your show with it, 100%.
Can I bring in Greg here? Because he's filthy rich. So I want to know what he thinks.
Yeah, what do you think of your tax cut?
I'm filthy rich.
Filthy
with
and rich, I'm
love.
told.
Well, no, again, Jessica proves Jesse's point that they say that they are for the idea, but not the process. It is always that off-ramp to actually doing something that they will find, whether it is crime, immigration, or the economy. I definitely want to get rid of waste, fraud, and abuse, except, but, I want safer streets. But what about no cash bail? We want an immigration process just like you, except we don't like the way you're doing it. And then, we realize they don't have a replacement. The idea of talking about these tax cuts is not even close to being a solution. The solution is cutting spending. We're spending ourselves off a cliff. And you're saying we need to raise taxes. Why? Because you can't cut spending. You want to raise taxes because you will never, ever cut spending. We just want to go back to 5 years ago. That's all we want. Can't we just have a budget from 5 years ago? That's not too bad, pre-COVID. Why can't we do that? You guys. All right. I want to go back to the front part of this segment where these Democrats were pushing the bad things that happened because of DOGE, that there were crimes committed. Okay, let's compare their predictions to the other side's predictions. We sat here and predicted the border crisis. They didn't. They mocked us. We predicted the trans issue. We knew this was going to be a big deal. They didn't. They called us transphobic. We knew that there was going to be a Ferguson effect after George Floyd. They said, no, crime was getting better. They were wrong. Joe Biden's unwellness, Kamala's incompetence. We were the ones that when we made predictions, because of our filter, were correct. Compare that to the other side. Nothing that they predict, which is always existential, apocryphal, delusional, never happens, right? What did they say? Threat to democracy. The planet's going to end. The laptop is fake. Russians are behind this. None of that panned out. And now what they're saying about DOGE, they're saying, oh, my God, people are going to starve. So they were actually taking the debt. No, oh my God. Let me finish
This
for
country's
once.
overweight.
You have,
80%
my
of
point being is
USAID grants
you've
have been cut.
lost the right for people to believe your hypothetical fantasies because they're never right. And you're willing to take the debt crisis and crush it under another fantasy. We don't believe you. And guess what? We don't have reason to believe you. And you brought up the Elon Musk drug thing. Why should we believe that when it comes out now? Do you think, using your what if this happened or what if he came out in support of Biden? We never would have heard about the ketamine, but he's pro-Trump, and now you're talking about the ketamine. He's having an impact as a public servant on America. Now you bring up the ketamine. You know what's funny? This guy is doing nothing but service. He's getting nothing out of this. That used to be a Democrat. That used to be a public servant. And now a guy who creates Neuralink, creates an internet process for the poor, electric cars, robots, rockets that save astronauts. He's a public servant who's also the richest man. And you guys don't like him. He's exactly what a Democrat used to be, a public servant. But now you only serve yourselves. You're like, what can I get out of this? And if we use identity politics, we can get everybody to declare what they want from somebody else. It becomes an attack over a finite pie when he just wants to expand it. There, I've said enough. I think I can go home early.
Fine by me.
Energy there. Katie, would you like to wrap it up?
I would love to. So, going off of Greg's point, Democrats' entire survival and existence depends on a bloated government. Whether it's taxpayer dollars going to NGOs for their pet projects, taxpayer money going to these big universities where they can indoctrinate all these kids to then go out into the world and spew liberal ideology and to talk about how we need even more government spending. The list goes on and on. The handouts that they want through the government that the federal government has no business engaging in. Democrats are perfectly happy with having rampant corruption, government waste that's going to tank the country into oblivion because of all the debt that we have, so long as it preserves their political power and they're able to continue the Washington grift that continues on and on. Trump brought Elon in, which is another example of how he does things very differently, someone from the private sector to say, people have been saying for 30, 40 years that this needs to be done. You hear it today. I think that we should cut spending, but I just don't think it should be done this way. Well, which way? Should we have another commission to write a report among a report, another report to say that we need to cut this kind of spending, not to mention going in and finding it where we didn't even know it existed? And now it's Congress's job to do what they were elected to do, to go in and to stop the abuse of the American taxpayer, to codify these cuts, which 70% of Americans actually agree with, and move on. Because a country cannot survive, in Elon's words, while we're ruled by our bureaucracy and not governed by democracy or in our republic. That's just the bottom line. So that's why they're so upset, because they're coming after the way that they survive, and Democrats can't survive without a big government.
Well, both sides have argued for decades that they did want to make these cuts, so maybe this sparks a conversation about how we actually get there.
I'm tired of sparking conversation.
I am going to stay optimistic to counteract
Stop
Greg.
it.
Yes, to counteract Greg.
I thought I'd give it to Elon as a presentation from our country.
Thank you.
Thank you, Elon.
Thank you.
Take care of yourself.
Thank you. This is a lot. The luck of this is amazing.
That's right. A large lot.
Well, let me say perhaps a few words that this is not the end of DOGE, but really the beginning. My time as a special government employee necessarily had to end. It was a limited time thing. It's 134 days, I believe, which ends in a few days. So that, it comes with a time limit. But the DOGE team will only grow stronger over time. The DOGE influence will only grow stronger. I'd liken it to sort of Buddhism. It's like a way of life. So it is permeating throughout the government, and I'm confident that over time we'll see $1 trillion of savings and a reduction in $1 trillion of waste and fraud reduction. The calculations of the DOGE team thus far, in terms of an FY25 to FY26 delta, are over 160 billion, and that's climbing. We expect that number will probably go over 200 billion soon. So I think the DOGE team is doing an incredible job. They're going to continue doing an incredible job, and I'll continue to be visiting here and be a friend and advisor to the president. And I look forward to times being back in this amazing room. By the way, isn't this incredible? Look at this incredible. it's stunning, I think. The way that the Oval Office, how the president has just completely redone the Oval Office. It's beautiful. I love the gold on the ceiling.
Thank you. It's pretty nice.
Yeah.
That's been there a long time. That was plaster. Nobody ever really saw it. They didn't know the eagle was up there, and we highlighted. It's essentially it's a landmark, a great landmark, and that's 24-karat gold, and everybody loved it. And now they all see it when they come in. So it's been good.
The Oval Office finally has the majesty that it deserves, thanks to the president. So I look forward to continuing to be a friend and advisor to the president, continuing to support the DOGE team, and we are relentlessly pursuing $8 trillion in waste and fraud reductions, which will benefit the American taxpayer. That's it, really. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
All right.
Great job.
Thank you, President Trump. The president mentioned that you had to deal with all the slings and arrows during your time at DOGE. There's this.
Well, some of the people, some of the media organizations in this room were the slingers.
Well, so there is a New York Times report today that accuses you of blurring the line between.
Is the New York Times, is that the same publication that got a Pulitzer Prize for false reporting on the Russiagate? Is it the same organization?
I got to check my Pulitzer counter.
It is.
I think the judge just ruled against the New York Times for their lies about the Russiagate hoax, and that they might have to give back that Pulitzer Prize. That New York Times. Let's move on.
Okay, then
Next
President
question.
Trump. I got one for President Trump. So President Trump, Biden aides who used to work here are in talks with Republicans in Congress to go and testify about what they did or didn't do to possibly conceal President Biden's decline. Do you think that Dr. Jill Biden should also have to come in and testify about what she did or didn't do?
Well, I hate the concept of it. It's the wife of a man who was going through a lot of problems, and everybody that dealt with him understood that. And I guess it came out during the debate loud and clear. That was the biggest signal of all. They have to do what's right. The country was there was a lot of dishonesty in the election, as you know, 2020. That's been now caught. People understand it was a rigged election. And when you go further out, when you see the auto pen, I mean, I think the auto pen is going to become one of the great scandals of all time, because you have somebody operating it or a number of people operating. Because I knew Joe Biden. Joe Biden wasn't in favor of opening up borders, letting 21 million people into this from prisons and mental institutions and gang members. He wasn't into that at all. And who signed these orders, proclamations, and all of the different things that he signed that set our country so far back, that was so bad for our country?
With the auto pen, how would it work? Like, we're in the Oval Office right now. If there was a group of rogue staffers that worked for you who wanted to advance a bill or an executive order without your knowledge, how could they do it? How do they go
Well, it's very
behind
hard,
the
because
president's
I'd
back?
read your newspapers or your media the next day, and I'd say, well, I didn't approve that, and I would find it. I mean, they wouldn't get away with it for long, because I'd say, I never signed that. Who the hell signed that? Auto pens, to me, are used to sign letters to people, because we get, I think they said 20,000 letters a week. And you like to be able, when somebody takes the time to write a letter, it's nice to sort of write back. And auto pens are meant for that. Auto pens are not meant to sign major proclamations or tax cuts or borders, anything having to do with the border, which is so important. And if it happened on my watch, I would be able to see it, because the next day or sooner I'd be reading about something that I knew nothing about, and who the hell signed this. So I almost never use the auto pen. In fact, yesterday I was signing about 81, I think it was 81 proclamations and statements to people that I think should be signed by us. I think when you write letters to foreign dignitaries or presidents or prime ministers, you should be signing those letters, not done with auto pens. I understand he signed almost everything with an auto pen. It's a very dangerous thing. It really means you're not president. Whoever operated the auto pen, and we think we know who that is, and it was actually more than one person, but that's not what the presidency is all about. I hardly used to hear it.
Reinstate the tariffs on China. You said that they violated the agreement with the U.S.
Well, they did. They violated a big part of the agreement we made. You know, if you read that whole statement, I was very nice to them. I helped them because they were in trouble with the stoppage of a massive amount of business. But I'm sure that I'll speak to President Xi and hopefully we'll work that out. But yeah, there's a violation of the agreement. Yeah, please.
Mr. President, can you give us an update to the latest ceasefire agreement that Israel has agreed to, but Hamas is still considering?
Well, they're very close to an agreement on Gaza, and we'll let you know about it during the day or maybe tomorrow, and we have a chance of that. And I think we have a chance of making a deal with Iran also. They don't want to be blown up. They would rather make a deal, and I think that could happen in the not-too-distant future. That would be a great thing if we could have a deal without bombs being dropped all over the Middle East. That would be a very good thing. They can't have a nuclear weapon. We want them to be safe. We want them to have a very, very successful nation. Let it be a great nation, but we can't have them. They cannot have a nuclear weapon. It's very simple. And I think we're fairly close to a deal with Iran.
Mr. Musk, question for Elon.
Yeah, please.
You said just now that you look forward to being a friend and advisor to the president. So do you expect to continue advising the president and DOGE informally, or are you going to sort of shift your focus entirely to your companies?
Well, I expect to continue to provide advice whenever the president would like advice.
I hope so.
I mean, I expect to remain a friend and an advisor, and certainly if there's anything the president wants me to do, I'm at the president's service.
Mr. Musk, on DOGE, you said that there was $1 trillion promise for cuts from DOGE.
Yes, I think we do expect over time to achieve the $1 trillion.
But what have you found in your time here was the biggest roadblock to getting those cuts? Was it the cabinet, or was it Congress, or something else? What was the biggest roadblock from your work?
It's mostly just a lot of hard work. It's really not any one person or Congress. It's going through really millions of line items and saying just each one of them makes sense or does not make sense. Obviously, at times when you cut expenses, those who are receiving the money, whether they're receiving that money legitimately or not, they do complain. And you're not going to hear someone confessing that they received money inappropriately. Never. They're going to always say that they received money appropriately for an important cause. Naturally, that's what you'd expect. So we just have to. It's just a lot of work going through the vast expenses of the federal government and just really asking questions. What's this money for? Are you sure it's actually being used well? Many times we can't even find anyone who defends it. So for a lot of the expenses, there's actually no defender at all. And then we have to just work through the process of stopping the spending, where there's often literally no defender. Nobody even knows why the money's being spent. It's truly absurd. I mean, we find situations where there are millions of software licenses with 0 people using them. 0. Exactly. This is the quizzical expression. You're like, surely, if there's millions of software licenses, someone should be using them. No, and then we've got to go through the process of saying, okay, look, if no one's using the software, we can terminate this software license agreement. That's everywhere in the government, by the way.
Mr. Musk, what do you think would be easier, colonizing Mars or making the government efficient?
It's a tough call, but I think colonizing Mars and making life multiplanetary is harder. And as I said, we do expect to achieve over time the $1 trillion of savings. We can't do it in like a few months, but if you say by the official end of DOGE, which the president may choose to extend, is the middle of next year. Say by the middle of next year, with the support of the president and Congress, could we achieve $1 trillion of savings? I think so. We're on track to do so.
Do you have faith that Congress is going to do
Thank you, Mr. President. You had mentioned earlier in the week that DOGE had become a whipping boy, and as the president mentioned, you went through a lot to go through this process. Yeah. Was it worth it for you, and what would you change?
Yes, so what we found was happening was that if there were any cuts anywhere, then people would assume that was done by DOGE. And so we became like essentially the DOGE boogeyman, where if any cut anywhere would be ascribed to DOGE. A friend of mine's daughter, who's at law school at Georgetown, thought that DOGE had cut the Senate, internships, the legal internships for the Senate, and we have nothing to do with that. So if they have been cut, it's not to do with us, just as an example. So, it just became a bit ridiculous where any cut anywhere was somehow DOGE, including things that made no sense, and we would agree made no sense. There are many things that occur in the government because it's the banal evil of bureaucracy. It's sort of the frankly largely uncaring nature of bureaucracy. It's as the great Milton Friedman said, money is spent most poorly when it is someone else's money being spent on people you don't know, and that's how federal spending is. And then you can't really even blame the individuals because the way the government works is complaint minimization. So when you do try to, when someone within the government tries to stop that money being spent, there's usually someone that complains. And then their manager will say it's not worth the trouble, just pay it anyway. That happens over and over again.
So was it
I think it was an important thing. I think it was a necessary thing, and I think it will have a good effect in the future.
Thank you, President Trump. This week there was a video on board a plane that showed the First Lady of France slapping her husband, Emmanuel Macron. Do you have any world leader to world leader marital advice?
Make sure the door remains closed. That was not good. No, I spoke to him, and he's fine. They're fine. They're two really good people. I know them very well, and I don't know what that was all about, but I know them very well, and they're fine.
What do you think about this Democratic Party plan to avoid being swept in every battleground state again by spending $20 million to study how to speak to American men?
Well, they spent 2.8 billion. We spent 1.5. We spent much less. We spent about half of what they spent, and at the end they were $28 million short. They had to be. They spent 2.8 billion. It's a lot, but they couldn't get 28 million at the end, and now they want to spend. I read that they want to spend money to learn how to talk. That's fake. You don't want to be fake. You shouldn't have to hire consultants to say what America needs, because then the consultants should be running the deal, not them. But I read that they want to spend a lot of money in each state. So we won all 7 swing states, 7 out of 7. We won a lot more than that. We won the popular vote. We won everything. And they want to spend money to find out what they did wrong. And I mean, I could tell you what they did wrong. I could tell you every one of their programs. When they say men playing in women's sports, I would say that's not a winner. When they say transgender for everybody, I think that's not a winner. When they say open borders so the entire world population of criminals can pour into our country, I don't think that's a winner. I mean, I just gave them that for free. But I don't know if they'll change their ways. I see them all the time. I see people that I know in Congress, Democrats, they're trying to justify some of the things I just said. You can't justify them. I always hear they're 80-20 issues. I say they're not 80-20, they're 97-3. They might be 99-1. They're not 80-20. They wish they were 80-20. And they're wasting a lot of money if they're going to continue with that nonsense.
And this one's a little bit more of a page 6 question, but back when you hosted The Apprentice, you mentioned once in 2012 that Diddy was a good friend of yours back then. He has since found himself in some very serious legal trouble.
Yeah, that's true.
Would you ever consider pardoning him?
Well, nobody's asked. You had to be the one to ask, Peter, but nobody's asked. But I know people are thinking about it. I know they're thinking about it. I think some people have been very close to asking. First of all, I'd look at what's happening, and I haven't been watching it too closely, although it's certainly getting a lot of coverage. I haven't seen him. I haven't spoken to him in years. He used to really like me a lot, but I think when I ran for politics, that relationship busted up. From what I read, I don't know. He didn't tell me that, but I'd read some little bit nasty statements in the paper all of a sudden. It's different. You become a much different person when you run for politics and you do what's right. I could do other things, and I'm sure he'd like me, and I'm sure other people would like me, but it wouldn't be as good for our country. As we said, our country's doing really well because of what we're doing. So it's not a popularity contest. So I don't know. I would certainly look at the facts. If I think somebody was mistreated, whether they like me or don't like me, it wouldn't have any impact on me.
Mr. President, on the big beautiful bill, would you like to see the Senate build in some support for your tariffs on the big beautiful bill, or should that be a standalone bill?
I have great support on the tariffs. I mean, I was so honored that we got that ridiculous stay lifted, because that would have taken away presidential power. It would have taken away everything that was granted by the founders. It would have been a terrible thing. And it would have, most importantly, would have left us vulnerable. We have a lot of countries that use tariffs on us and use them viciously, actually, viciously. And if we didn't have the power to use tariffs on them, and instantly, not when you go back to Congress and try and get hundreds of people to agree on something, that would take months to get just one simple proclamation. If we didn't have the power to counteract their powers, you wouldn't have a country left. We have to act fast. We have to be fast and nimble, as they say. And that was a really great moment, I think, yesterday when that stay was lifted. And hopefully now we'll go to court and just win that battle. Because if we don't have the power to do what they're doing to us, we are going to be a great nation no longer.
Elon Musk was once idolized by folks on the left in this country before joining your administration. Now he's considered a hero by conservatives. Why do you think this man, what he's done in American life, has been so politicized? Does it only have to do with you?
His life has been amazing. I mean, I look at so many different things. I look at that rocket being, guided back into position. I've never seen that before. I thought it was a space movie. I thought it was a movie. You look at what he's done in terms of communication, it's been unbelievable. So many different, even tunnels going underground, not having to go through all the process of going, he's got a company that does that. He's got so many different companies. Starlink, as an example, he saved a lot of lives, probably hundreds of lives in North Carolina. I don't even know if you remember, but I called you. They needed Starlink in North Carolina. And I didn't know what the hell Starlink was. I said, what is it? Who owns it? He said, do you know Elon Musk? I said, yeah, I happen to know the gentleman. This was before his government stay. And they said, we really need it, because North Carolina was literally became an island. It was, people had no communication. They had no access to anything, and they were dying. And I called up Elon, and you can't get it because it's so successful. It's very hard to get. And he had so much of it brought over there, and they told me it was unbelievable. It saved a lot of lives. So, he's just done a lot of things. I don't think, frankly, I don't think he gets credit for what he's done. But he's a very good person, too. You know what? If he wasn't a good person, but he did the same things, I'd probably maybe speak differently. He happens to be a really good person who loves the country.
Mr. President, one big, beautiful bill. You had indicated this week that there were some things you didn't like about what had passed in the House. What changes do you want to see the Senate make? And you had also indicated there were things you didn't like about the bill. What would you be suggesting he push senators to change in their version?
Well, I'll tell you, I'll go first. It's an unbelievable bill. It cuts your deficits. It cuts, it's a huge cutting. But there's the things I'd like to see maybe cut a little bit more. I'd like to see a bigger cut in taxes. It's going to be the largest tax decrease or cut in the history of our country. I'd like to see it get down to an even lower number. I was shooting for a slightly lower number. I would have liked to have done that. But with all of that being said, when you look at the tax cut and the fact that the original tax cut, which made us so successful, we had the most successful 4 years in the history of our country, the economy, and this is going to be even better. And you see that by the reports that came out just yesterday or tonight. I guess they were released this morning at 8 o'clock. You see the kind of numbers where somebody that's a pro is like, whoa, I haven't seen numbers like this since I've been doing this. These are human emotions of professionals that have never seen numbers like, and we've just started. The bill is a great bill. It's going to be jiggered around a little bit. It's going to be negotiated with the Senate, with the House. But the end result is it extends the Trump tax cuts. If it doesn't get approved, you'll have a 68% tax increase. You're going to go up 68%. That's a number that nobody's ever heard of before. You'll have a massive tax increase. If it does get approved, you'll have a large tax cut, the largest we've ever had. When you add the past tax cuts that we got you, the Trump tax, they call them the Trump tax cuts. It's an amazing bill. It does amazing things. With all of that, it's going to be adjusted a little bit over the next coming weeks, and I think it's going to be passed. The Republicans want to pass it. With all of the great things it does, including an extension of debt, it's the extension. We have to extend the debt. If we don't extend debt, we're in default. Now, the Democrats might like our country to be in default, but in 250 years, we've never been in default. That was handed to them by a very well-meaning man that gave it to them because he thought it was the right thing to do. It could have been their problem before the election, but this man thought it was the right thing to do, and he was well-meaning. I don't hold anything against him for that, but that was put on our plate when it should have been on the Democrats. September 28th, a famous date. It should have been taken care of by the Democrats, but this person, a man of power, gave it to us so that in June that comes due. Well, we have to take care of that, because if we don't take care of it, we have a country in default, and we don't ever want to have a country in default. You know, I'll tell you, a certain senator, Elizabeth Warren, said that she would never, ever allow a default on our debt. She would never let it happen, and she would like to get rid of the debt ceiling, what's called the debt ceiling. I call it the debt extension because we really need an extension, that she'd like to see that gotten rid of. And there are many people that agree. Many Democrats agree with that. But we gave that through, and you know, I don't want to say an error. He did it well-meaning. They gave that to us. It was a Democrat problem just before the election. Would have had a huge impact on the election. And to our benefit, we won anyway, but to our benefit, but felt that really for the good of the country, we should extend that. But Elizabeth Warren and various other people would like to see that, her whole career, she wanted to see it terminated, gotten rid of, not being voted on every 5 years or 10 years. And the reason was because it's so catastrophic for our country. And I always agreed with her. That was one thing I agreed with her on. Now, I haven't spoken to her, but I would say that if you asked her that question now, she'd say, no, it's their problem. But it's a very unfortunate situation. It's a very unfair situation. And she happened to be right on that. It should be gotten rid of, or it should simply be extended. But that's one of the things that gets taken care of in this bill. That automatically gets extended for a 4-year period. And it should be. But I agree with Elizabeth Warren on that. I think you should get rid of it. It's too catastrophic. Yeah, please, go ahead.
What message do you like to send to international students? Are they still welcomed to study in the United States? And one question for Mr. Musk.
To students? Well, we want to have great students here. We just don't want students that are causing trouble. We want to have students. I want to have foreign students. I think Harvard, you know, it's close to 31%. That's a lot. Our country's given $5 billion plus to Harvard over a short period of time. Nobody knew that. We found that out. I wouldn't say that was a DOGE thing, but we found that out over a period of time. That was sort of a Trump thing. We ended up in litigation for other reasons because they're very anti-Semitic. And in finding out and in going through the books, we found out that the country gave them $5 billion plus, much more than that, actually. And we're having it out with them, and let's see what happens. I think we have a very good, well, it's a very sad case. It's a case we win. We can't lose that case because we have the right to make grants. We're not going to make any grants like that. But I don't think Harvard's been acting very nicely. I think Columbia wants to get to the bottom of the problem. They've acted very well. And there are other institutions, too, that are acting, but Harvard's trying to be a big shot. And all that happens is every 3 days, we find another $100 million that was given. 2 days ago, we found $200 million more. The money's given to them like gravy. I'd like to see the money go to trade schools, where people learn how to fix motors and engines, where people learn how to build rocket ships, because, you know, somebody has to build those rocket ships. Yeah. And I'd like to see trade schools set up, because you could take $5 billion plus hundreds of billions more, which is what's spent, and you could have the greatest trade school system anywhere in the world. And that's what we need to build his rockets and robots and things that he's doing, and to build lots of other things. And, you know, I went to school with people, in some cases, they weren't good students, but they could fix the engine of a car better than anybody I've ever seen. They could take it apart blindfolded. They had an ability at that. And they did very well. They made a lot of money. You know, it's a very skilled job. It's great. But I'd like to see a lot of money going into trade schools. I've always felt that. And we probably found our pot of gold, and that's what's been wasted at places like Harvard. And the money's been wasted. Yeah, please.
Yeah, well, I wanted to ask quickly, Mr. Musk, is your eye okay? What happened to your eye? I noticed there's a bruise there.
Well, it wasn't. I wasn't anywhere near France, so.
What does that mean?
No,
I didn't notice it.
First Lady of France.
Getting slapped.
I didn't notice it.
Yeah, no, I was just horsing around with little X, and I said, "Go ahead, punch me in the face," and he did. Turns out, even a 5-year-old punching you in the face actually does.
That was X that did?
Yeah.
X could do it. If you knew X,
I saw his mom right now. But I didn't really feel much at the time, and then I guess it bruises up. But I just horsing around with the kids.
I didn't notice it, actually.
Anchor David Asman and Brian Kilmeade, co-host Fox and Friends, also host of One Nation. It's going to air this Sunday at 10 p.m. Eastern. Gentlemen, great to see you.
Great to see you. You got friends in New York, by the way.
Yeah. Oh, well, I do.
Yeah,
because you acknowledge
right
your DC friends.
So, guys, interesting press conference, right? Brian, at the end of the day, though, Musk failed to live up to his own benchmarks, right?
Well, in a way, he said, "I like to save $1 trillion. I like to cut off $1 trillion." No doubt about it. But what he didn't know exactly what he was getting into. I think that the two features I'm going back to is Jesse Waters, where he sat around the round table, and when he did the 2 tiers with Brett Baer, where you saw it's so much more than Elon Musk. That you got people that really gave up their lives, went 3,000 miles away, and jumped into Washington, D.C., some of which in their 20s, some a little bit older, with incredible credentials, to look in and try to set up better systems. In terms of a dollar figure, I hear you. It should have been bigger. They hope to get it bigger. Codifying it, it's on its way. But what they do is setting up systems by digitizing Social Security, by increasing the possibility of hacking, by getting rid of COBOL and advancing the computer languages, by being able to make sure that any bill is paid will not be paid unless there's a name on the bill. Will tighten up the expenditures down the line. And I think his people are going to be working hard and making everyone try to be fiscally responsible. I think it's a step, more than a step in the right direction.
So it's not, David, as you well know, just about the bottom line. In this case, the number of dollars cut or saved. It's also about the spirit of the undertaking. He keeps saying this is now a way of life. Is it? Do you see a way that DOGE has any teeth without Elon Musk?
Absolutely, I do. But you got to imagine the frustration of Elon Musk. He's a guy who's used to getting things done. I mean, big things like revolutionizing the car industry, like drilling underground with this incredible
the
Boring Company, or going to Mars, colonizing. I mean, and he gets a lot of them done, and yet he goes into Washington, faces this obstacle of backstabbing and people lying flat in your face, people who said that they trust you and that we're going to work together, et cetera. However,
welcome to Washington.
Welcome to Washington. Donald Trump had 4 years of practice at it, so he knew what he was getting into. Maybe he didn't do enough to prepare Musk for that. However, it's not over. And there's a guy named Russ Vought, who's the director of the OMB, the Office of Management and Budget.
He's going to join me later in the hour.
Well, he is a very critical element to all of what DOGE was trying to do, because what he's going to do next week is bring rescission. The idea of rescission, which is taking back money that has either been ill-spent or hasn't been spent at all. A lot of that COVID money still exists. Billions of dollars of COVID money that hasn't been spent. How do you get that back? How do you get back all the stuff that Elon and the DOGE team was talking about? There's a thing called rescission, which has to be passed only by a majority of Congress. And I think it's one of those things that the Republicans could all get together on, giving DOGE more power to pull back. I mean, they got $9.4 billion out of the budget because of what DOGE did, even though DOGE came to them with $175 billion of recommendations. They could get much more of that, maybe not the full 175, but much more through the OMB, sending a bill to Congress. Congress passes it with a majority. Tens of billions of dollars, extra dollars, could be saved by doing that.
But don't you think also some of the stuff you can't just do right away? You got to see. You can't walk into the Pentagon and say, "Let me cut this." You got to say, "Wait a second, who whose system is this? How do we benefit from this? Is there redundancy here? And then when there is, you have somebody at the top of the heap with Pete Hegseth, along with the president's mandate, to say we're going to start cutting things. But I think there's some things you can cut right away. Like, for example, I'm fascinated by the hearings on the NGOs. Where are these NGOs from Catholic Charities on down who got these huge checks for these illegal immigrants that came through? And he looked at this and said, who's making this money here? Where is this money? We're going to start getting some stuff done in hearings, and then you'll have DOGE in place already to take it out.
Just for example, all these departments that exist, not just the big departments, the big secretariats, but the Institute for Peace. He found out the Institute for Peace, they have a $55 million budget. Doesn't sound like a lot in the whole scheme of things, but what extra money they had, they put in their own private account. They were spending money apparently on the Taliban. I mean, who needs the Institute of Peace if they're that poorly run? Maybe entire institutions like that could be eliminated from our budget process.
Well, interestingly, you mentioned the Institute. It's like right across the street from the State Department, where I spend a lot of my time covering Secretary Rubio.
I've seen you.
A lot of these things, right, that he has cut started with great intentions, meaning, like, that's a perfect example. It was created as a sort of think tank inside the government to help the president look at, foreign challenges that the rest of the government didn't have time to. But over decades, over time, it devolves into a sort of money-sucking machine, which is like the natural laws of nature seem to make government agencies do this.
The most dangerous words in the English language put together. I'm from the government and I'm here to help. I mean, some of those things you think are very helpful don't turn out to be.
But rather than slashing, Brian, what do you think about sort of revitalizing some of these government agencies?
With a new lean focus.
Yeah.
And sometimes you need some new people at the top to do it. So nobody wants to wipe out needed aid for starving children in Africa, but they would love to know that that aid is going to the starving children of Africa. And that's just it. That's what the State Department found out. It wasn't happening. Marco Rubio went to slash it, and now they're looking to codify the reductions. And I think they're starting with $9 billion next week. So it'll be a start.
Yeah, certainly a start. Gentlemen, so great to see you on this
Good to
Friday.
see you as
Thanks
well.
for taking time with me.
Thank you for being here.
Love to get you back next week. All right.
I think the fundamental moral flaw of the left is empathy for the criminals and not empathy for the victims. Empathy for the criminals, but not empathy for the victims. And there's been way too much of that. That needs to stop.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.